Good morning. It's Market Day Report. Welcome to a Thursday. Oh, by the way, it's a big Thursday. We already have our first report from USDA. It's a weekly export sales report. We'll break that down in just a moment. Also, we have reports coming out at 12 o'clock Eastern Time. Crop production report, World Ag Supply Demand Estimates, or WASDE report. So hang on, could be a fun day of trade today. Speaking of trade, look what happened with the corn market in the overnight session. Higher trade, the front month at 440 and a quarter, up 3 and a quarter, and the new crop 3 cents higher at 442 and 3/4. And then soybeans 2 higher on the old crop, new crop 5 and a half higher, 1034 and 3/4. We'll touch on soy meal and soy oil before we roll over to Brian Hoops in just a moment, but higher across the board for meal, and the oil contracts were higher as well. Seeing strength pretty much across the board. Are you seeing that as well? July Chicago wheat 535 and a half, penny and a quarter higher. Hard red was penny 3/4 higher, 528. Spring wheat up 7 on the D's at 651 and 3/4. And the cotton market in the overnight action, well, just kind of slogging around, 67.40, down 25. Let's go to Springfield, Missouri. President, Midwest Market Solutions is Brian Hoops. All right, Brian, I guess the place to start, export sales?
Yeah, good place as any, Tony. Good morning. They were pretty disappointing overall. So for the week ending June the 5th, corn, old crop corn, about 31 million bushels. New crop actually had a small net reduction of a 1.2 million bushels. So nothing great, but still above the pace needed to reach the USDA forecast. In fact, we've already hit that pace. And we're going to have an updated number later this morning from the government. Old crop soybeans only 2.3 million bushels. That is a marking year low. And new crop beans were only 2.1. Again, neither one of these numbers is very good. Wheat was a disappointment. It's down from where we have been at only 14.3 million bushels. Now, wheat is the one market here that has had a blistering export sales pace so far in its new crop marketing season. That wheat pace is a 12-year high, but this number isn't really conducive to help further that. In addition to the export numbers that came out this morning, CONAB released their production figures, and it's probably similar to what we're going to see from the USDA today. They updated Brazil's corn production number to 128.25 million tons. That's up from 126.8 last month. And compare that to a year ago, we're going to have a much larger crop out of Brazil. But last year's crop was only 115 million tons. The soybean production number increased to 169.6. That's up from 168.3. And compare that to last year, that's almost 22 million tons larger soybean crop than what they had a year ago. This is going to keep pressure against our old crop corn and soybean futures. Our export sales program is always front-end loaded, and now it starts to slow down as we get into the summer, especially corn will slow down. That's why the USDA has been very conservative on raising exports, because the summer pace is always much slower as that safrinha crop gets harvested and gets sold into the world market. In fact, there was a sale a couple nights ago, about 15 cents a bushel cheaper out of Brazil compared to the United States.
Yeah, and as we go through those export sales numbers, one we don't talk about very often, sorghum. Nothing at all to China. 90,700 metric tons actually sold, and the shipments at 12.6, and the fact that we don't see China in the market for U.S. sorghum, that has an exclamation point at the end. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back and look at beef and pork exports and the numbers as we prepare for trade today. Market Day Report continues in a moment. Well, nothing cures high prices like high prices. How much higher does this go? 235 in the South. Talking cash cattle trade in Texas. But in Kansas, already 238 to 240. Haven't heard anything out of the North. Live cattle futures yesterday, that front month, June, buck 10 higher at 228.17. Again, what is it, 2.5 weeks until that contract expires, and it has to converge with cash. Then you look at feeders, and feeders were lower across the board in trade yesterday. Hog trade yesterday was stronger. Let's go back to Springfield and Brian Hoops. Brian, looking at the export sales numbers, actually beef numbers pretty good, and then the pork export, the inspections, actual shipments look pretty good. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. Beef sales 15.3 million tons and shipments at 14.5. Pretty routine, but decent enough here where we have been considering the prices that we're at. I think that's a very good number. As prices have moved up, our sales have really not slowed down at all. It's that pork number that feels like a chest falling because we've been so good on our pork exports over the last 6 weeks. This number of 9.7 million tons is a real disappointment. Now the shipments are still there, 38 or 33.8, a good number. That's going to fall next week because of these poor exports that we saw this morning. But that's something that I think may catch the trade's attention here, maybe not just this morning, but maybe here real soon. We've rallied the pork market very strong based off of cutouts and based off of cash trade, as well as strong exports. Now we're starting to see a disappointment in that exports, and another week of that would be kind of a confirmation that maybe we've topped out the export market at these higher price levels for the summer cuts.
And I guess we can't forget we are 1 week and 1 day away from a cattle on feed report from USDA that comes out on Friday the 20th. So just one more thing to have at least in our periphery as we trade out the rest of this week. Brian, thanks for popping by. Brian Hoops, Midwest Market Solutions.